You scared me.
I know, I'm like,
We have 12 seconds. That was awesome. All right, now we're ready. All right, Ross, you doing okay?
all right, how are you?
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Okay, thanks.
Calling to order the Monday, September 17th, 2018 regular meeting of the 37th Council of the City of Berkeley. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Baker,
Here.
Councilmember Blanchard.
Here.
Councilmember Dean.
Here.
Councilmember Gavin.
Here.
Councilmember Hennon.
Here.
Councilmember Stedman.
Here.
And Mayor Turback.
Here. Our first order of business is approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Your Honor, may I make a motion to approve with one slight adjustment? Item number 6, the presentation. We'd like to have it rephrased to say, matter of receiving a presentation by the Downtown Development Authority regarding the City of Berkeley Design Review Board.
Okay. Is there a second?
Support.
Any discussion? Additional changes or corrections? Seeing none, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on tonight's agenda as amended?
Blanchard.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Hennon.
Yes.
Stedman.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
And Turback.
Yes. The agenda has been approved. Please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge. With us today is Pastor Zach Dunlap.
Let's pray. Good and loving God, thank you for who you are and what you do. Thank you for the ability you've given each and every one of us to breathe, to think, to discern, and to work together for the good of this community. Bless our city council as they discern and deliberate how best to move this city forward. Bless each and every member of this community who lives, works, and plays here. Bless us so that we might be a blessing to others. And even as we celebrate all that is already great about this city, help us to never cease to better ourselves and better our community, that we might become more gracious, more compassionate, more loving, and more just together. In Jesus' strong name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please turn to the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, up next, we have reached the citizens' comments portion of our evening, where you may present your thoughts on issues that are not included on tonight's agenda. Council members will not engage you in a discussion, but if your concern needs to be addressed by a member of city staff or any department of the city, please sign your name on the sheet provided at the clerk's table. Remember, you can speak on specific agenda items while they are being considered. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and city of residence.
Charles Terrell from Berkeley. A couple of follow-ups to last month. Tim McLean got back to me about the things going on at Harvard Commons. As it turns out, for each individual unit, they were getting final inspections and their individual certificates of occupancy. The PUD contract terms is not yet been finalized. They are going to develop an audit document to go back through the PUD contract and assure that all those items are met. The other follow-up, should I hold that off until number 8 on the agenda, or should we talk about it now? It was in regard to eligibility for planning commission.
If what you're talking about is not specifically talked about in this order and number 8, then you can talk about it now.
Well, no, it's specifically about number 8.
And if it's specifically about number 8, we'll see you then.
We'll hold that one off. Okay, one other one. Back when this board approved the sidewalk pilot program, no bid work was given to Hubble Roth Clark. I asked if it was bid and was told no, it was not, because they are our engineering firm, and we've got a contract with them. I specifically asked, when is that contract up? When will it be rebid? City manager said he did not know. City attorney did not jump in with information, so I, through the Freedom of Information Act, I requested a copy of the contract. The contract was let in June of '03, a 3-year deal with one-year option. So in effect, the contract expired in June of '07. So we've been without a contract with Hubble Roth Clark for 11 years, and we've been giving them no bid business since then. Very risky to do no bid business. I find it inconceivable. I understand that it expired under a different city manager. I find it inconceivable that the city attorney and the city manager did not know that it had expired. And you need to take steps right now to put a plan together to come up with a statement of work, RFP, and to rebid that. And it's not too soon to start thinking about the legal services contract, which is up in June of 2019. And that's based on a proposal from 2012, so things have changed from there. I would assume that we'd also want to have the legal services rebid, so it's not too soon to start that bidding process as well.
Thanks, Jeff.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Stimmick, and I live in Berkley, Michigan. As soon as my husband and I discovered the house next to us was being torn down and a new one was being built, we contacted the building department in March of 2017. I asked an employee what our rights as residents were, and I was told we didn't have any. It was private property, and the builder could do as he liked. We noticed soon after construction started in May of 17 that the grade of the property was excessively high. The builder stated the grade would change as the construction proceeded. The grade never changed, and right before the snow fell in October, the builder put in a driveway. The driveway had a ridge along it, but the last block of pavement before the garage did not have a ridge. In February, we experienced extreme flooding in our entire yard. Our yard had never flooded in the past, so we knew it was a direct result of the new build. In the past, any water that did not go to the street pooled in the back of our yard. This was true also for the homes on both sides of our property. The water from the new build came directly onto our property through the absent ridge. The house and garage had no gutters, and all this came onto our property also, as well as silt and building debris from the new home. We called the code enforcer, who came and looked at it and claimed the new build was graded away from our property and the water was just our own, and we had been dumping our water onto the neighboring property in the past. We discovered with a level and a bucket of water, the property was graded directly toward ours. We called the code enforcer several times after this, but he became belligerent and did not return our calls. Any calls to the building department resulted in call Dwayne, call Dwayne. Our yard flooded for 5 months. The water gathered around our home's foundation, and water that had in the past flowed to the street pooled against the high driveway of the new build. I contacted Lansing and was informed that changing the grade of the property and forcing the water on neighbors is against code, but it is up to the city to enforce it. It only took one posting on social media to find that my husband and I were not alone. Many residents were angry about the lack of code enforcement in general, and especially with regard to new builds. Many also believe the city code officer holds existing residents accountable for codes, but not new builders. I contacted Dennis Henna in February with the issue of flooding. He passed it on to Tim McLean, but even with help, finding information on building codes proved very difficult for me. Our yard flooded for months, which was not acceptable. One of the very last things the builder did was finish the gutters, and the ridge was not even completed until the owners took possession of the house at the end of May. Based on this experience, I started a petition which asked the city of Berkley to enforce existing codes hold building inspectors accountable, and upgrade codes to protect its residents against flooding and damage from new build homes. The petition has approximately 250 signatures. There's an online version and a paper version. There are a couple of duplicates, and online signatures are not 100% Berkley residents. When I contacted citizens individually, between 80 and 90% of these individuals signed the petition. The petition led Dennis Hennon to look into the law of surface draining. He found out quickly that there were problems with the interpretation and the enforcement. Why couldn't this have happened years ago, or at least when I questioned Dwayne and the people at the building department? I am not the first one to draw light to this very same problem. We have had to spend money on a drain to take the water away from the side of our house because the driveway of the new build is so high. What is being done to compensate residents for this, or waterproofing, or sump pumps, or grading that wasn't needed before these new builds? And when will the codes be enforced properly? And I also ask that this be made part of public record. I have both the online and the written petition here. As well, I have a letter from another resident who wanted to be here tonight, but her son was ill, so she sent me an email and she asked me to read it for her. Since we could not be here today, Nancy is graciously speaking on our behalf. We moved to Berkley a little over a year ago, while the Alamoff house next to us was in the construction phase. During the construction, the builder and his contracted workers had little concern for the neighbors of the amount of noise they were making. On many occasions at 7 a.m., they would turn on loud machinery, even right next to the bedroom window of our infant. After asking them to be more considerate and speaking to the company's owner, this continued to happen for the duration of the building. Additionally, they destroyed a 12-inch wide and approximately 30-foot long area of our grass to make a driveway. They did not ask our permission to do this. We called to ask what was going on and was even then told about it. The builder promised to fix it. However, he laid sod on top of our current lawn and is now very uneven. They also dug out grass to bottleneck the driveway without permission. We called the city about this, and the inspector told us there was nothing he could do about it. He would not even come to check the property area in question. Most importantly, our backyard started to have flooding when it rained. We thought this was unusual because it was not an issue prior to the house being completed. We looked at the neighbor's driveway compared to our property, and it was much higher and slanting towards our house. This naturally would cause water to flow into our yard from theirs. We called the city inspector, who assured us everything was to code because he inspected it. He then told us the former owners of the property had a sump pump that was taking in the whole street's water. If this was the case, then our new neighbors living in the new build houses would be having the same issues with water. However, they do not. We are asking you to investigate these issues with this building company and its property further. As a Berkley resident, we hope it is important to our city council to uphold the codes set in place for housing. We are asking you to maintain these standards to keep our houses and the residents supported, safe, and protected. Daniel and Melissa Sternberg, and they live on Cambridge in Berkley. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Hi, Wendy Zabramski, Berkley. Piggybacking on what Nancy had to say, I was one of the other people, along with her, that collected signatures, and I gotta say, because of my health, and Nancy had had surgery on her leg, we weren't able to go out and get as many as would have been easily gotten. Of the several I asked, there was not even a no. They were all understanding that the codes need to be enforced, that it had some situation or another. For over 2 years, the citizens have brought to the council the concerns regarding the lack of code enforcement in building companies thumbing their nose at the city's codes. From closed sidewalks and porta potties on the sidewalks for months at a time, no fencing of buildings area, inviting serious injury to curious children. The most serious of all properties fill-ins causing water to run off into neighboring property, causing floods. Often months after the builders were gone, when residents complained to the city, they were told it was a civil matter. Now is the time for the city council, for the council to take action and do away with the irresponsible employees allowing this to happen. The city manager has assured me and many others that changes are happening. Clearly, they have not. I made at least 5 complaints over the last year on a house next door being flipped. The reasons varied. However, the building inspector and code enforcement have been in that area with 3 houses, including the one right next door to the house being constructed. There was no reason that they, couldn't have seen what was going on. I ask you to please do your job and have the city manager do his. If you can't fire the personnel causing the problems, then maybe the city manager should go. I would like this to become also part of the public record, and I would like to hear back from council members regarding this.
Thank you, Wendy.
Hi, my name is Molly Schneider. I'm a resident of Berkley. I wasn't going to speak, but hearing the previous resident speak about water issues, we do have something similar that happened to our home this past year. There was a build at 2994 Wakefield. I am at 3003 Kipling. My neighbor at 2993 Kipling. We have both we've created berms anywhere from 6 inches to a foot high to prevent water from coming from that build onto our property. Again, we both separately, my neighbor and I did contact the city. Mr. Franks did come out. He looked over everything. He said that he would not issue the final grading permit until everything was made correctly. We were told that it was going to be swaled. It was not. And so my neighbor and I have spent extra money on mulch, dirt, and building up the back of our yards to keep water from flowing onto our property. So I just wanted to support the other residents that are experiencing this and say that we've had a very similar experience with our house. Thank you.
Molly.
Ron Stannard, Berkeley. In August of 2017, Berkeley experienced the dreaded rain event. And at least 700, if not significantly more, including me, had their basements flooded. The city responded quickly by having an open meeting large enough to require the high school auditorium. And I would say it was an exciting meeting, at the least. In October, the city manager signed on behalf of the city an engineering study contract where the study was supposed to be issued in March of 2018. March in 2018 came and went. And every 2 to 3 weeks, I would call the city asking, where's the report? That report was issued in mid-July as it was presented to the board, or I'm sorry, to the council. At that time, the report was made available online, and it's some interesting reading too. But at that time, there was a statement made that a study committee of some nature would be formed to take this issue, and the issue is our lousy sewer system, to study the report and begin pulling recommendations together. I have been calling every 2 weeks since July, and the information I have been getting from the city is no committee has been formed, no discussions are ongoing, there is no schedule for any discussion on the report. I'm kind of upset. We've had our basement flooded twice, and all that I see going on right now, and that's part of your job, is talk about a new Parks and Rec building, but nobody's talking about the sewer system. Now, I know it's large and complex, and it isn't a problem that's going to be solved in a month. But if we don't start working on it with a sense of urgency, what's going to happen? I mean, a new Parks and Rec building, with all due respect to the Parks and Rec department, isn't going to increase the value of my property. But I can pretty much guarantee you that if we have another basement flood, if I ever wanted to sell my house in Berkley, I'd have a hell of a time. And I have invested a great deal of money in my property in Berkley because I'm a proud homeowner. But something has to be done about this, and the city has to demonstrate that the sewer system hasn't disappeared from its purview, that it isn't on the back burner. Something has to be demonstrated to show that you appreciate the fact that many, many of your neighbors suffered from this sewer system. And we have yet to do anything about it except commission a study. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing nobody else coming up to the microphone, we will close citizens' comments. But before we move on, I'm going to kind of hijack the meeting for a second. It's been at least a couple of years that we've heard a lot of the same stories that we heard from Nancy today. And it seems like every time we take a couple steps forward and get some things under control, we end up falling backwards again, or lackadaisical. I'm not sure what the reason is. It is critically important for us to uphold the codes and enforce the codes of our city. I don't think you'll find any resident who would ever say otherwise, and obviously we are all residents up here, so I'm not, yes, it is critically important to us. However, the fact that we are still in the same position or continue to find ourselves in similar positions is incredibly unsettling. I can't really fathom a reason of why it continues to happen and why we find ourselves in the same situation, no matter what seems to be said. I don't think you've ever heard anybody up here say, nope, we're not worried about that. It's critically important. So the why and the what are what we seem to be missing here. And you know, Wendy mentioned she's spoken to people and things are going to change, or things are supposed to change. Look, at the end of the day, it's real easy to say that. Someone's in your office, they're upset or they're complaining, oh, yeah, we'll take care of it, we'll look at it. And I've said the same thing up here. I've said it on numerous occasions, that I am not going to tolerate living in the same situation that we had, where we have code enforcement issues, whether it's new construction, old construction, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And it's absolutely has to end. It cannot continue. There's no reason for it to continue. And I'm not going to sit up here every month and have to hear from folks who have had very real practical things happening to them and me say, thank you for your comments. We'll look into it, see what we can do. I'm sorry that it happened. Nancy, I'm incredibly sorry. I mean, it's you nor any other resident should ever have to deal with anything like that. And happens, and we try to correct it, or somebody tries to correct it, but it has happened. Look, if it happens once, that's too much as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not sure how much stronger I can say this, but it has got to change, and it's got to change now. This is absurd, and I'm sure there are other council members who would like to comment. And look, this is not going to be a back and forth. We're not doing a citizens' comments back and forth. But while we had a few folks talk about this, and we've had it come up before, and I know we've got a lot of other things to get to on the agenda, very briefly, if council members do have any comments, now is the time, and then we'll move on with our meeting. Councilmember Hennon. Sorry, yeah, I waited to close citizens' comments just because I didn't want to get into, because we do have other things. I apologize.
Some other day.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just got to say, our city's, both the code enforcement and the inspection program is just completely dysfunctional. I really think it's time we clean house and start over. I mean, there's no doubt that we've allowed new builds to cause flooding for neighbors, but there are not only just common sense solutions that could have solved this, there's 50 years of case law that this shouldn't have been happening, that we've not been observing. And yet we're paying a building official top dollar who doesn't know this fundamental issue, and has not only just this issue, has allowed other things to go that just, completely screws the people living next to these builds. We're paying for other inspectors who have vague rejections and poor record keeping that drag construction to a halt and terrifying residents with threat of jail time when they haven't done anything wrong. And we still have code enforcement that's spotty at best. So we are seeing improvements, but they've entirely come from without. The key here is that for 2 years, there's been no change coming from within. The city has to be embarrassed, or residents have to come and beat them over the head to get anything done. And I've just had enough. There's been ample time for them to fix things and put things back together, and they haven't done it. I'm calling for the functions of code enforcement and inspection to go out to bid. This wouldn't be my first choice, but I don't have any faith that there's going to be improvements without drastic changes. And I think we can get a lot better value and a much higher level of service than we have now. I'm just tired of intervening and micromanaging just to give our residents the basic level of service that they deserve.
Thank you. Anybody else before we move forward? Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do wish Mr. Stannard had been here to hear a little bit more about the yet another town hall that we have coming up to talk about the sewers and the other infrastructure items and explain more detail. But we can reach out to him afterward. I'm glad that he came tonight to help ask the question that many of us have wondered, and so to keep that conversation going about the sewers as well.
All right. Thank you. I apologize for going off script and doing something that we do not do very often, but in this particular case, I felt it was warranted. So now let's move on and get back on track to our consent agenda. Ms. Boucher, would you please read the items on tonight's consent agenda?
Approval of minutes, a matter of approving the minutes of the 37th City Council meeting on Monday, August 13, 2018. Warrant, matter of approving warrant number 1330. Ordinance number 01018, matter of considering the second reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 130 Vegetation, Article 2, Trees, Bushes, and Shrubs, Section 130-31 to Section 130-44 of the City of Berkley Code of Ordinances. Full copy of this ordinance is posted for 10 days at the Berkley City Hall, Library, and Community Center. Ordinance number 01118, matter of considering the second reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 138, Article 6, Division 7, Site Plan Review of the City of Berkley Code of Ordinances. Full copy of this ordinance is posted for 10 days at the Berkley City Hall, Library, and Community Center. Recognition, matter of recognizing DTE Energy for their sponsorship of the 2018 Annual Cruise Fest Classic Car Parade held on August 17, 2018. Resolution number R2818, matter of recognizing Mary Elizabeth Schmidt on the occasion of her 102nd birthday. Proclamation number P0618, matter of declaring October 2018 as Dyslexia Awareness Month in the City of Berkley, Michigan.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Your Honor, if I may, just as a point of order, I do work for DTE, although I didn't have anything to do with the company giving us money. I did just want to make that clear that since there's a DTE item on the agenda, I thought it'd be at least important to let folks know I work for them. I'm really glad that DTE helps support Berkeley the way it's done for many years. And if it's if up to the board, if the council here, if I can vote on the consent agenda or if I should abstain.
Does anybody have any issue with Mayor Pro Tem voting on the consent agenda?
No.
Did not believe so. Okay.
You're stuck.
With that, are there any additions, corrections, changes? Seeing none, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on the consent agenda?
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennan,
Yes.
Stedman,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Blanchard.
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. Do we have a motion to approve that consent agenda?
Did we get a second on that?
No, we didn't.
Who wants to second that?
I will.
All right.
Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Dean. Should we have that point of order? Okay. The consent agenda has been passed. We now move on to tonight's regular agenda. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 1 on tonight's regular agenda?
Recognitions, presentations, matter of any recognitions or presentations from the consent agenda.
Okay, so we have a number of those today. First up, we have a recognition. And I want to recognize DTE. So I think we have some representatives from DTE. Could you guys please come up to the microphone for a second? It's a team game. Yep.
Hello,
Hello, would you tell everybody your names, please?
I am Cynthia Rucker. I'm program lead for our lighting and appliance program.
Alex Citron, Program Manager for DT Energy's Lighting and Appliance Program.
Wow, Cynthia and Alex. It is my pleasure to present this certificate of appreciation, and this is the 7th year, I believe, that DT has been the presenting sponsor of our Cruise Fest. We are incredibly grateful for your sponsorship, and the night that we had in Berkeley a couple weeks back. Hopefully you were able to sneak out there and have some fun.
Running the tables.
Perfect, see that? And not just running them the whole time, maybe have some fun too. But we are incredibly grateful, and we have this certificate of appreciation. The City of Berkeley acknowledges the participation and generosity of DTE Energy for its sponsorship of the 2018 Cruise Fest Classic Car Parade, presented on September 17th, 2018. Matt Baumgarten, City Manager, and Dan Turbrack, Mayor. Would you guys please come up and accept this certificate?
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Save it for later.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You can if you want to.
If you want to.
You're up.
Yeah.
I did write a little.
Paid for
Yeah.
So,
it. You can move the mic up too if you want to.
pardon
You
me?
can move the microphone up if you like. It's adjustable, yeah.
So, again, thank you for this award. DTE is committed to serving our communities. We appreciate the City of Berkeley for its ongoing efforts to build a safe and prosperous community, while also helping its residents be a little bit more energy efficient. The Berkeley Cruise Fest sponsorship would not be possible without our vendor, ICF, and actually particularly the program manager and City of Berkeley resident, Alex Citron. So if you could please give him a round of applause. So I accept this on behalf of our energy efficiency team and DT Energy. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex? No?
And I'm sorry. Thank you, Dashiell.
Okay, moving on. I have asked Mayor Pro Tem Baker to read our very special resolution, our 2818, recognizing Mary Elizabeth Schmidt on the occasion of her 102nd birthday.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Your Honor, for this great pleasure to read this resolution this evening on behalf of the city. This is a resolution of the Council of the City of Berkeley, Michigan, recognizing Mary Elizabeth Schmidt on the occasion of her 102nd birthday. Whereas Mary Elizabeth Merrigan was born on September 4th, 1916, in Muskegon, Michigan. Her parents moved the family to Fresno, California, where she lived before moving to Berkeley in 2008. And whereas Ms. Schmidt's brother, John H. Merrigan, was a Berkeley resident at 1390 Oxford from September 1957 until his passing in 1981. In 2008, Mary decided at 91 years of age to quit driving and move in with her niece, Suzanne Theedy, on Oxford. And whereas for the past 10 years, Mary has come to love the friendly Berkeley community. It has given her a better quality of life and allowed her to continue being independent. When asked, "What is your secret to living long and getting around on your own?" Mary always replies, "Eat well, exercise, take vitamins and supplements, and find the good in people." And whereas Mary Elizabeth Schmidt has lived and tasted life throughout this period that has given her insight, experience, and wisdom that few of us can truly appreciate. Today, I join with Mary's family in wishing her a very happy birthday. Now, therefore, the City of Berkeley resolves, Section 1. The City Council, on behalf of all local residents, offers its genuine pleasure in extending special greetings to Mary Elizabeth Schmidt upon the occasion of her 102nd birthday. We are grateful for this opportunity to join with the family and the many friends of Mary as we honor an individual who truly understands the beauty of life in its challenges and triumphs. May the health and happiness her years so richly merit be hers always. Introduced and passed at a regular City Council meeting on Monday, September 17th, 2018. Daniel J. Turbrack, Mayor. Congratulations.
You gonna take that down?
Yeah, Daniel, bring it down.
You gonna bring it down?
Yes.
Sure. You don't wanna prove she can walk it or anything?
Save the jig for later, right? Yeah.
Oh, don't start dancing. Harder for life. God bless you all and thank you.
Thank you again.
And now we'll move on. I've asked Councilmember Hennon to read Proclamation 0618.
A proclamation declaring October 2018 as Dyslexia Awareness Month in the city of Berkley, Michigan. Whereas dyslexia is a neurologically based inherited disorder that interferes with language acquisition and processing that may affect as many as 20% of the population, resulting in learning difficulties with respect to reading, writing, spelling, handwriting, and sometimes in arithmetic. And whereas dyslexia can affect anyone, regardless of race, gender, culture, or socioeconomic status, and impacts 1 out of 5 individuals and 70 to 80% of struggling readers. And whereas dyslexia is identifiable as early as 4 to 6 years of age, and early intervention is essential because the negative consequences are highly preventable through effective, direct, explicit instruction in phonomic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And whereas when individuals have access to early intervention, appropriate assistive technologies, and accommodations, the human economic costs of dyslexia to society are significantly reduced. And whereas literacy for all is an important goal for the city of Berkeley, and dyslexia affects a high percentage of our struggling readers, it is imperative that we learn to recognize and to address this treatable condition so all are able to learn to read and spell proficiently and achieve to their full potential. Now therefore, the City of Berkeley hereby proclaims October 2018 is Dyslexia Awareness Month in the City of Berkeley, Michigan. proclaimed this 17th day of September 2018 at a regular meeting of the Berkley City Council. Daniel J. Turbrack, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Hennan. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 2 on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M6618, matter of authorizing the Berkeley High School Instrumental Boosters, 2325 Catalpa Drive, Berkeley, Michigan, to conduct tag days in the city of Berkeley on Friday, October 5th through Sunday, October 7th from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Is there a motion to approve M6618?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Stedman.
Support.
Support from Mayor Pro Tem Baker. Mr. Baumgarten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is, I think, an annual item. It comes before us quite frequently, but it goes to support a great cause. Tag Day supports the music education program, specifically the instrument boosters actually put this on, and they'll be located at various businesses around the community. The list of those participating businesses are included in your packet. You'll see that they cover a wide range of areas, 12 Mile and on Woodward and on Coolidge, so it's going to be a very musical period for those couple of days. Lisa Kempner is representing the applicant for this, if there are any specific questions.
Ms. Kempner, do you have anything you would like to add first?
Not really. We do this every year. It is our biggest fundraiser for the instrumental and orchestra programs. That money ends up going to provide scholarships and music and instruments. I mean, anything that supports the music programs. Last year, we had 535 students participate. This year, that was about 72%. This year, we're aiming for 100%, which would be 634 students, so y'all better sign up. And we don't experience any problems. We're kind of old hats at this by now, so it's a well-oiled machine.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. Any questions, comments? We good? Jack?
Same as when my kids were in school, and that was a long time ago.
Right? Good? Seeing none? I think you're going to be okay here.
Sounds good.
Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennan?
Yes.
Stedman?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. M6618 has been approved, and we look forward to that very soon. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 3 on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M6718, matter of authorizing the Royal Oak High School Band and Orchestra Boosters, 1500 Lexington Boulevard, Royal Oak, Michigan, to conduct tag days in the city of Berkeley on Friday, September 28th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. and Saturday, September 29th from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Is there a motion to approve M6718?
So moved.
Support.
Who moved first? Moved by Councilmember Gavin, with support from Councilmember Dean. Mr. Baumgarten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Much like the last item, the Royal Oak High School Band and Orchestra is also looking to raise money through a Tag Days event. They won't be as widespread in the city of Berkeley. They're planning to be at Crispelli's and McCourt's Music on these selected days at the selected times. I believe, again, we are joined by a representative of the applicant.
Debbie Natinsky.
Anything we forget?
No.
Everything
no,
sounds good?
We just, thank you for your support. We'll be at the 2 locations, and the businesses have been incredibly supportive and pretty much goes to the same, support at the Band Boosters Royal Oak as Berkeley. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you for coming out as well. It's nice to see both of the area bands being supported. For those that may have a question as to why Royal Oak is coming to a Berkeley Council meeting, it is an important fact to know that a small portion of Berkeley actually is in Royal Oak schools, and those kids play instruments too, and so we're glad to help support them and the rest of the Royal Oak schools, as well as our Berkeley, obviously.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on M6718?
Hennan?
Yes.
Stedman?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 4 on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M6818, matter of authorizing the mayor to execute a contract between SMART and the city of Berkeley for fiscal year 2019 municipal credit and community credit funds in order to provide public transportation services for the period of July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019.
Is there a motion to approve M 6818?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Dean with support from Councilmember Blanchard. Mr. Baumgart?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Normally, the Recreation Department will be bringing this item to you. Unfortunately, Teresa was not able to make it tonight, but she did include in her very thoughtful memo noting that this is the same item that comes back to us year after year. It's part of our ongoing relationship with SMART. We did see there's two forms of credits here. There's a municipal credit and a community credit, both used towards transportation purposes. We did see the municipal credits funds holding steady, and gratefully we did see a 15% increase in our community credit funds. Teresa and I were able to talk about this earlier today. She noted that transportation has been incredibly busy at the Recreation Department. They provide a wide range of transportation services for the seniors that they serve. And they continue to do so, and she welcomes anybody who has transportation questions or wants to know if they're eligible to absolutely reach out to the department to find out if there's some way that department can help them out. So incredibly important service. I do want to note, as we do annually, the dates are a little bit off. They run in line with our fiscal year, but they never seem to get it to us on time. So they're actually a little bit early by delivering us the July contract in September from their normal. We've had it as late as December in the past, but they're getting closer to being on the ball and by delivering it to us in September. But absolutely any transportation activities that we've endeavored upon from the beginning of July 1st onward are covered by this agreement. So we don't lose out on anything by any means.
Comments, questions from council? Councilmember Blanchard.
I have one. How come we have an amendment to the community credit with an additional $1,584? There's two major amounts, and then we have an amendment, which is another $1,584 for some reason.
I would have to follow up with Teresa on that and get the answer for you, sir.
Just seemed different than before, but we'll take the money. I mean,
Yes.
that's no problem with that.
Because we're doing such a great job.
Yeah, okay.
Additional questions or comments on SMART contract? Seeing none, as manager mentioned, this is an annual item, and it is actually a little earlier than normal. And if nobody else has any other questions or comments, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Stedman?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennan?
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. 6818 has been approved. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 5 on tonight's agenda?
Motion number M6918, matter of approving the appointments to various boards and commissions.
Is there a motion to approve M6918?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion approved by Councilmember Hennan with support from Councilmember Dean. Mr. Baumgart?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as you know, we fill volunteer positions and vacancies throughout the entire year, so we've got some great set of volunteers to bring for you today. Each of the applications are included in your packet. There are 4 bodies that we are looking to fill vacancies in. The first one is Board of Review with Suzanne Thied, and I apologize if I say any of the names incorrectly, will be appointed to a term expiring July 1st, 2021. The Environmental Advisory Committee, Mr. Alex Citron, who I believe we just saw a few minutes ago, with the term expiring July 1, 2019. Our brand new Technology Advisory Committee with Mr. Mike Fry with a term expiring in 2019. And the Tree Board with Ms. Molly Schneider, who is, we also just saw, with a term expiring in 2021. So those are the 4 people placed in front of you today.
Questions, comments from council before we consider and thank these volunteers? Great. Just out of curiosity, I feel like we've been on a pretty good run. If
I
you
know.
are one of these people, would you please stand up?
Yeah, we've got 3 out of 4.
3 of them here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
for volunteering. Thank you. We certainly appreciate it. And now that we've made them all stand up, Ms. Boucher, would you please call them?
Yeah, hopefully this vote doesn't go south.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennan?
Yes.
Stedman?
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. Thank you again. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 6 on tonight's agenda?
Presentation. Matter of receiving a presentation by the Downtown Development Authority, DDA, regarding the City of Berkeley Design Review Board.
Ms. Carmody.
Yes.
See if we can make this work.
Is it on?
I don't know. It should be.
Maybe.
Oh, there it is. I hope you guys can see it because
Coming
it's
in.
not
It'll
very
come.
clear.
Coming back.
It'll get there, don't worry.
So this is kind of the Cliff Notes version of the presentation that was done last May to a joint meeting of Council and the Planning Commission. You know, by the consultant that we hired, Norrie Winter, from Winter and Company, to give you guys an overview of the design guidelines. So I'm going to give you kind of a Cliff Notes version of those design guidelines, why they're, what their purpose is, kind of what they include, and then talk about the steps of implementing and what we're going to do going forward. So if this thing will work. Maybe not, huh?
Is it on?
Get some operator training.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, this is why Stan always has to be in the room.
Right.
Because it just, it never. You push the button and it's nothing on it. So it should work now. Thanks. So what do design guidelines do? Well, they convey the community's vision for the area. We had several public input sessions to make sure that we were hearing what the community's vision was, and you'll see kind of what those priorities were for them on a future slide. Enhance the downtown for all users. That means for our business owners, our pedestrians, and our visitors and our residents. Support neighborhood services. Build a sense of pride, because the more attractive your downtown is, the more pride I think a community and those business owners can take in it. And then give direction for official city policies and regulations, and that's where this design guidelines and the design review board comes in. Oops, so that went, there we go. So a year ago, actually in September, we did the first public input session, and we had quite a few people who came out and participated. It was over at the high school. It was a fun and interactive session. Several of you guys were there. Then in March of 2018, we did a preliminary draft document open house where people came back and then gave additional input. Both the sessions were well attended and we got great input. In June of 2018, the finalized document was presented to a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and City Council. And out of that was the next step of taking this design guidelines and adopting it, having the city adopt it with then the creation of a design review board. So chapter overview, there's 6 chapters. Chapter 1, we talk about the vision and design principles. Chapter 2 is site design. 3 is new building design. 4 is building rehab and adaptive reuse. 5, we delve into the character areas, in which each of those character areas, kind of what we expect to see in those. And then chapter 6, we actually covered some signage. The structure here is that these guidelines all come out of that vision statement that the public themselves, in these public input, in that initial public input session, expressed to our consultants. Out of that came the guiding principles, which you'll see, and out of that comes the intent statement, and then that drives the design guidelines. So these guidelines are all based on this public input and what our residents and business owners felt was important. The design principles, and these aren't necessarily in, orders of priority, but this is what came out, and this is what was important to our residents and our business owners, that we achieve excellence in design, that we don't settle for anything that's less than excellent, that we design with authenticity, that it reflects who we are as a community, that we provide signature open spaces, that when we do development, when we look at land use and when we look at streetscaping, we are providing those open spaces and community places. We enhance the pedestrian experience, the walkability. We've talked a lot about walkability and making it a much more pedestrian-friendly area. Promote creativity. We're already seeing some of that with the murals and the art festivals and things like that, and we want to build on that. And then draw upon our local design traditions. We have some really strong mid-century, fabulous architecture that we want to build on. We want to take those historic assets and make sure that we embrace them and let them guide some of our future development. That doesn't mean that everything's matchy-matchy, but that we keep that essence of who we are in future design. Design with consistency, design for durability, that means high quality building products. Design for sustainability. In an ideal world, we want our developers to include sustainable practices into their builds. We want to think about the future and what kind of a city and an infrastructure we're leaving for generations to come. And then finally, keep the automobile subordinate, which is tough because it's been kind of primary. But this was important to our residents, our business owners, and this came all out of that public input session. So I'm just going to hit some of the highlighted chapters. I'm not going to go through all of them. So you can see chapter 2 is site design, which is important. This was something we spent a lot of time on because of the fact that we have such narrow business districts. There's areas we have where you can see, you know, there might be a half a block before we start to push into the neighborhoods, or it might be, you know, a block, or it might be a little bit deeper. But we wanted to look at every single one of those possibilities and say, how does this site work? How are we going to transition into those neighborhoods? So there's actually a fair amount in this. In this you can see there's, you know, a shallow lot, a medium lot, and a deep lot. These are all examples of how we merge back into those neighborhood districts because we have to be sensitive to that. Once again, here's kind of a close-up of, you know, how those transitions are made. Adaptive reuse of parking spaces. This is big for us. We have so many surface parking spaces, and how do we address that? How do we start to think about activating them and just even making them more attractive? Here's an example. This actually could be laid over one of our properties down on Coolidge, which is where, you know, the little strip mall is just north of La Salette. And with a simple reconfiguration of, you know, taking out one of the curb cuts, changing around how the parking goes, maybe adding, you know, a little kind of public space area and some landscaping, you take something that was just a, you know, asphalt lot and you create something that is much more attractive and, you know, activates that street front, that's what we're trying to do. Chapter 3 is new building design. This will be critical as we go forward. We know we have developers who are starting to look and developers who have looked to do major projects in the DDA district. So I think new building design is going to be critical as we move forward. We talk a lot about building mass and scale and what we should allow and what we shouldn't allow in the district. We talk about building height. We talk about building articulation, which is the front facade, the fact that it needs to be interesting. It needs to step back. It can't just be a solid mass of building. We talk about the buildings being of a human scale. So you can see, once again, you know, with that step back, that we make it so that it becomes much more pedestrian friendly. It feels much more like it fits into the district. Building material options are huge. You can't see very closely. Actually, on this one, you can. So there's a P and an S there. If you go back, and then there's an A. So P and S means primary and secondary materials, and A means it's acceptable for just an accent. And you can see that what we talk about is being primary and secondary is masonry, you know, brick and stone and detailed concrete. What's not acceptable is inexpensive or thin, drive-it, EIFS, whatever you want to call it, or veneers that aren't going to be sustainable materials. We talked a lot about windows and how do we address windows, because a lot of our windows currently are covered up. We have buildings that are, you know, just solid brick walls. So how do we, you know, maybe create display areas on some of those solid brick walls that once again can activate and beautify the street? Rooftop additions, because we're so we have so many one-story buildings, is how can we start to look at doing second stories or, you know, and step backs to build up instead of losing the fabric that we have and creating interest. You know, so there's lots of examples there of, you know, second stories or third stories even that have been added, but they're done in an interesting way because of the way they step back. And then there's character areas. We spent quite a bit of time during that first initial input session just having the residents and the business owners kind of draft out what they thought each of these character areas were, and it came down to character area 1, which is basically Gateway West, area 2, which is the downtown core that wraps around, and then Gateway 3, which is South Coolidge, so Gateway South. Each of those character areas, then we went in and we delved into, okay, what's appropriate in each of those character areas? How do we want these character areas to act? And this is all, once again, information that came from our residents and our business owners that Winter and Company then took and distilled down into these design guidelines. So once again, you see where the downtown core is and the type of development, the type of new build, and what kind of businesses we want to see in there. And the same for the Gateway South. Then we also talked about signs, because we want to get more creative with signs, and you know, we want signs to be in scale to the building. Right now we limit creativity by limiting the size of our signs based on, I think it has to be 20% of the face, you know, of the building. Well, sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But what we want to do is really have excellent signage, and we want it to be in scale. We also want to, you know, to encourage creative signage and things like projecting signs that on our streets make a lot of sense because we are corridors. So instead of having a sign that's straight and flat against the building, let's get some cool projecting signs so people see them when they're driving down the road. So what do the design guidelines provide? We talked kind of about this, a vision for downtown that is distinctly Berkeley, a range of options for different types of improvement projects, clearly illustrated criteria to help plan, and a way to guide investment that will benefit the community at large. So implementation, you know, how do we make this work? So our goal, and this has been, we talked this out in the initial joint meeting between Planning Commission and the City Council. We talked a lot about how can we move this forward, and the Design Review Board seems to be the best way to do that. So what a Design Review Board does, first of all, let me say, after we decided to move in this direction, I called Wendy Ramson, who was she was the planner down in Ann Arbor when they took their design guidelines and created their design review board. She now works, I believe, for the Southeastern Michigan Planning Association. She's got a great depth of knowledge in the area, and so she really helped us kind of walk through how this process should work for us. And then we fine-tuned it internally as we met with like Kristen Kapolensky, who's the new chair of the Planning Commission, you know, with Tim, with the attorney, Matt. So, you know, we kind of hammered out how this is going to work and how it's going to look for us in Berkeley. So what the Design Review Board will do will review new construction projects, major facade improvements to ensure that they meet these design guideline standards, and then they make a recommendation to planning. So they're not usurping or taking over planning commission's role in the lease. What they're doing is facilitating the process. And this design review board would be appointed, I think there's 7 members on it, but they would be experts in these areas that apply to the design guidelines. So a landscape architect, you know, an architect, a developer, a construction, you know, engineer, design, and, you know, somebody who's got some strong planning. So we make sure that this design review board is made up of those experts who can really look and take these projects and these major facade renovations and measure them up and then make that recommendation to planning, like I said, facilitating that process and taking it off of planning's kind of workload and simplifying that process for them. So the next steps is we actually have to create 2 new ordinances, and it gets a little bit tricky here because you have to create the design review board ordinance, which is what you guys will hopefully see in the next month or 2, and that's an ordinance that then creates this design review board. And that goes under boards and commissions, and if I figured right, it's like Chapter 2, Article 5. But then there's also an ordinance that needs to be created that's a design review board review ordinance. So it took, I had to work on this for a while, you guys. And that actually then goes under like zoning administration and enforcement. So that is what will go to the Planning Commission next week. And that actually then talks about the design review board process, or the design review board review process. So timeline today, we're presenting this to you guys at the City Council. On the 25th, Planning Commission reviews the design review board ordinance and potentially holds that public meeting. October 8th, if, you know, this is based on whatever happens at the 25th Planning Commission, but City Council has the first reading of the Design Review Board ordinance and approves the Design Review Board review ordinance. Then on the 22nd, City Council has the second reading, and then hopefully in November, the council appoints those members to the Design Review Board. Now, if Planning Commission takes, you know, a couple months, then obviously this timeline changes a little bit, but, you know, this is just give you an idea of you know, how it could work. Ideally, we'll have this review board in place by December. I think, in my mind, the sooner the better, to make sure that we don't have any, that we don't repeat some previous, that we encourage better design and building than we've seen come to us in the past year or 2. So that's it. You guys have any questions?
Any questions for Vivian? Councilmember Hennon?
Yeah, more just a general comment, and I think I touched on this in the joint meeting that we had, but I just want to make sure that whatever ordinance we come up with is going to streamline the development process and not add bureaucratic hurdles.
100%, Dennis. You're absolutely right. And I do think if you talk to Planning Commission members, for the most part, they're eagerly looking forward to this board because of the fact that it will facilitate the process for them. But 100%, we never want to add another layer. We want to simplify and facilitate.
Councilmember Dean?
I just want to take a second and thank you and the DDA for all your hard work in pulling this together. I know that it's definitely necessary for the city. I think it's going to move the city forward in a very positive way. And the residents, I attended many of those meetings, and we got a lot of resident input, which is encouraging. So people are being heard, and I think Winter and Company is great, and I'm excited to see how this continues to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Your Honor. I echo that. Thank you for your work in helping shepherd us through this process. If folks wanted to see more information about this, is there a place that they could go to learn more and take a
They
peek at
sure
things?
can.
Oh,
Wow,
yeah?
what a lead in there. You know,
Hey,
you're good at that,
serve that
Steve.
up.
They can go to downtownberkeley.com, and if they go into the link that's called Designing the District, they can go to the downtown design guidelines and see everything. They can see the whole process as it's happened. They can download the complete 114 pages of design guidelines if they want. They can download the appendix that's there, as well as see all the presentation boards and everything that happened over the past year's process.
Great, thank you.
Seeing no additional comments, to Councilmember Hennon's point at the beginning about increasing, you know, when you have a very clear set of expectations laid out, you're not going to get some of the things that we've potentially had to work through, or the Planning Commission had to spend some more time on anyway. This is what we expect, and if it's not that, then I'm sorry, but this is what we expect. And hopefully, we'll have less of those conversations because, look, this is what Berkeley expects. Pretty easy. I know exactly what I need to do, and we can move the process, at least I hope, much more efficiently and you know, cut out a lot of the back and forth on things where it becomes very subjective. When we have, look, this is what we'll accept, this is what we won't accept. It's pretty cut and dry that way.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Thank you. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks, Vivian. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 7 on tonight's agenda?
Ordinance number O-1218, matter considering the first reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 106, Streets, Sidewalks, and Other Public Places, Section 106-221 and Section 106-222 of the City of Berkeley Code of Ordinances.
Is there a motion to approve O-1218?
Motion to approve.
Approved by Councilmember Stedman with support from Councilmember Gavin. Mr. Baumgarten?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we discussed in the previous meeting, we do have the need to update the city's zoning ordinance, or the city's code of ordinances specific to sidewalks and snow removal. We had specific district names written out in our last version, and each time we saw that a district changed names, or like we did a couple years ago, we saw that all of a sudden we did not have a requirement to remove snow in that new district. So what we're proposing here is a move to general language that just says all non-residential, which is our existing requirements. It's just said in a more succinct way that doesn't require a ordinance change to accommodate zoning changes. I do want to note in there that we do also, one area where this has been expanded, and it will correct this for the second reading if the council sees fit to proceed, move it forward that way. We're expanding this to privately owned alleyways in non-residential districts as well. We've got a couple of instances, certainly on 12 Mile, it's become an issue, where there are alleyways that are privately owned, but they're not, that situation does not fall under the existing text of our ordinance. So we've got private property owners who have sort of L-shaped properties. They're not removing the snow. This is actually preventing people from safely accessing other businesses within that 12-mile area. So this remedies that and gives us an enforcement tool to make sure that that snow gets cleared. It's good for the businesses, and it's good for anybody visiting those businesses. It creates a safer situation for them. Tim McLean was the primary driver on getting this in front of council this evening, and he's available if you have any questions as well.
Questions on snow removal?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you for answering my question before I ask it about the alleyways, so.
Councilmember Hennon?
Yeah, so to clarify, we're talking about Section 106-222, where it's talking about privately owned alleyways in any residential district. That should be in any non-residential district?
Right. So there's references to it in both 221 and 222.
Okay.
Additional questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you guys for helping keep us up to speed with this. This has been through the review process with the city attorney and all that, I imagine? Yep.
Yes, sir.
It has.
Yeah. Nice. Anything you'd like to add? Matt did a lot of good talking there. Anything else you'd like to add to the story?
Not unless you have any questions for me. as the city manager alluded to, zoning districts change, and I think it was important to just add language to address it in all non-residential districts. Looked at some communities that do have that standard for their residential districts, and they've said, yeah, those are on the books, but we really don't have the resources to enforce snow removal in residential districts.
So, do we?
In my opinion, we do not.
So there's not currently a standard for removal in residential districts, so this just continues the existing standard.
Okay. You have a question?
I think this is more a question for the city attorney, and I know we don't have, like we just discussed, we don't have a standard for any ordinance that residents have to clear their driveway or clear their sidewalks, but in a snow event, what is the resident's liability if they choose not to clear their sidewalk and someone slips and falls?
Well, as a general matter, the private property owner would owe or have liability that they have already at law, irrespective of the ordinance that the city may elect to adopt or promulgate. So the city, by virtue of this ordinance relative to snow removal, is really not creating an additional cause of action that somebody might be able to assert as a theory of liability for non-performance. It may be a proof issue, but it doesn't create a cause it doesn't create a cause of action for somebody by virtue of the ordinance.
Okay, so it doesn't impact the city's liability, but
right, it doesn't create a cause of action as it relates to the private property owner. That liability is already created at law.
Yeah, the resident, if they choose not to shovel, may find themselves liable. So while we don't have an enforceable ordinance on the book for residents to clear the snow off their sidewalk, I think I'd encourage them to do so for their own legal protection.
Yeah, it has become, over the last couple of years, I've had or the last year specifically, a lot of residents reach out to me about a lack of removal in the residential. I know we're not talking about that right now, but on the residential and not shoveling or anything. And again, it's not an enforceable action, but there is liability. So I certainly do encourage everybody to please remove the snow as quickly as you can. I understand that people have to work. I'm not saying that this is, for example, in these districts we have 12 hours. I think that is, for most of us, probably plenty of time to be able to clear our sidewalks for residents. All right, back to this. Any additional questions on the ordinance in front of us today regarding removal in the alleyways? Seeing none, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on O-12-18?
Blanchard.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Hennon.
Yes.
Stedman.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. Ms.
we were done
Boucher,
early.
would you please read item number 8 on tonight's agenda?
Ordinance number O-1318, matter of considering the first reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 90, Planning, Article 2, Planning Commission, Section 90-17 of the City of Berkeley Code of Ordinances to modify and update Planning Commission appointment and qualifications requirements in accordance with the Michigan Planning Enabling Act 2008 PA 33 as amended.
Is there a motion to approve O-1318?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion approved by Councilmember Stedman with support from Councilmember Blanchard. Mr. Baumgarten?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Attorney, whoever wants it.
I can do the opening for this. At a previous meeting, Mr. Tyrell brought up noted that our current ordinance actually prohibits planning commissioners from sitting on different boards and commissions throughout the city. We did look into this and found that the language in that was consistent with a pre-2008 iteration of the state statute, the Michigan Planning Enabling Act. As Mr. Starin reviewed this, I'm sure with Mr. Chris' aid, we noticed that that requirement was dropped when the state statute was revised in 2008. That was no longer a requirement from the state, and therefore there was no longer a purpose for the city's language to mirror the state statute, and well, the previous version of the state statute. So what this does now, is the motion alludes to, is brings our language in line with the state's requirements, which does not actually prohibit planning commissioners from sitting on any other boards and commissions. So it's open to you for a first reading this evening.
that you've waited so patiently from citizens' comments.
Thank you. No. So I guess the question then becomes, being that it's critically important to uphold and enforce the codes as they are, this is not anticipated to be retroactive. So then the two members of the Planning Commission who are not eligible because of 90-17 should still be removed?
Through the mayor.
Yeah.
They would have to voluntarily step down from one of the two conflicting areas until they can be reappointed after the ordinance becomes.
Okay, I don't know the order of Mr. Richardson as to which was his first or his second, but the latest, he was already on another board before he was appointed to the Planning Commission, so he would have been ineligible and appointed mistakenly, so he needs to be removed from the Planning Commission.
We would have to look into that.
Mr. Attorney?
Well, without knowing that information, whether there's a limitation with respect to whatever other board this particular individual may have served on, we don't know if there was a limitation as it relates to that other board. As it relates to the prior Planning Enabling Act limitation, if he was appointed in error or he was operating with two offices in conflict with the old Planning Enabling Act and the city ordinance, it appears, and again, I would have to look at that, but it appears that he would have to resign from one of them. I'm not in a position to.
The first one or the second one?
I am not in a position right now to opine as to whether there's a requirement that he withdraw from one or the other. But he would not be able to continue to serve in his capacity as a planning commissioner until this amendment to the city's ordinance would take effect.
Both of them?
Absent him resigning from the other board.
Well,
board or commission.
I guess in case of Mr. Richardson, I don't know which was his first and which was his second.
I don't either.
So
I don't want to get into any.
I won't get into that one, but in terms of the latest one, he was not eligible at the time of his appointment to Planning Commission. So must be removed from Planning Commission in my mind. The way I read the ordinance in the for the Planning Commission, currently 90-17.
We will determine the fate of our volunteers who have volunteered for boards. We will have to figure that out. And if we have to kick them off of one, we will kick them off of one so that they can then be reappointed to that one when it becomes law.
If they were appointed in error, we correct the error.
I understand. We will do that.
Okay.
I think there's an open question as to whether it's void or voidable, or whether it's correctable.
Yeah, and we'll figure that out. We'll make sure we figure that out.
That's what I'm asking for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments?
I think I have a question or maybe clarification or a suggestion or something. So there's the Incompatible Public Offices Act, and maybe somewhere it can be listed like what is actually an incompatible office, right? Because it's one's subordinate to another, and so not every office, not every position in the city is going to be problematic, but some might. So I don't know in this ordinance or somewhere else if that's somehow listed where you're going to find conflicts so that people are more at ease with the idea. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Lisa. Seeing no additional comments, Ms. Bowser, would you please call the roll on O1318?
Dean?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennan?
Yes.
Stedman?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes.
Wait a minute.
Blanchard?
And
Yes.
Blanchard.
And him too.
Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 9 on tonight's agenda?
Resolution number R2918, matter of authorizing amendment of the 2017-2018 operating budget, those operating funds as presented.
Is there a motion to approve R 2918?
Motion to approve.
Mayor Pro Tem. Support from Councilmember Dean. Mr. Baumgart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our finance director is actually attending the Michigan Government Finance Officers Association meeting for the statewide meeting, and so she's unable to join us this evening, but she did put forth two sets of budget amendments, one for the closing year and one for the year that we're currently in. Starting first with the 2017-18 fiscal year amendments, you've got amendments to the funds for local street, funds for recreation revolving, and funds for the funds for the fringe benefits account. So three non-general accounts that are placed in front of you today. There's explanations after each one explaining the need for the changes. These are typical for the end of the budget year. We tend to wait as long as we can to make sure that these numbers are accurate as possible, and we start our annual fiscal audit at the start of October. So this is a sort of a fiscal house cleaning before we begin working with Plant Moran to make sure that we again have worked within the confines of general accepted budgeting standards and practices. And I can answer any questions you may have.
Questions on our budget amendments today? This is our first set, as Mr. Baumgart mentioned. Councilmember Hennon?
One question on Dream Cruise laborers. We needed to increase by $10,000. We've been doing the Dream Cruise for a lot of years, and it seems like we should have that nailed down pretty tightly. Do we know why we missed the mark there?
Yeah. Moving into the 17-18 budget, we looked at consolidating all the Dream Cruise accounts under one heading, and that was placed under the rec revolving, the 614 account. And so that was a consolidation of everything that we have done. That means moving the DPW labor into was essentially a rec account. And so everything was tagged to that account under this attempt to sort of consolidate everything. And it just, the budget numbers didn't transfer over from what was currently housed onto the DPW's line item onto the 614 account. So it was, you're correct, our numbers have stayed static, and if you look to past iterations and costs associated with Dream Cruise, we are right in line. But when we attempted to consolidate that, it just, there was a number that didn't transfer over like it should have. We have since then decided that that was not the best way to present that information, not because of this, but because you've got now DPW workers and decisions that are made in one department now affecting the budget of another. And so while it's nice to consolidate everything under one tent, it's not accurate to span of control, which is important when we move to budget these things. So you'll see in the budget for this year, you'll see those items are broken back out by department. So, but that's a very long form explanation of why we need to make that change now.
And to summarize it, to make sure I understand it, we tried something a little different and missed a little bit trying that, and now we're going to go back to the old way anyway.
Correct.
Okay.
So we didn't see our cost spike. We just saw the
This is just some bookkeeping.
The numbers didn't transfer over as we would have intended.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no more questions on R 2918, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Did I have, Mayor, did you have someone move or second?
Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Dean.
Thank you. Gavin?
Yes.
Hennon?
Yes.
Stedman?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. Now we move on to agenda item number 10. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 10?
Resolution number R 3018, matter of authorizing amendment of the 2018-2019 operating budget, those operating funds as presented.
Is there a move to approve R 3018? Motion approved by Councilmember Dean.
Support.
Support for Councilmember Gavin. Mr. Baumgart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Presented the same form as the previous agenda item. You've got updates. This is the first quarterly update of the budget year that we're currently in. So updates to the DDA, the court fund, the general fund under community promotion, the general fund again under finance department, under the information technology department. And then you've got roll forwards, which are projects that were intended to be completed in one budget year or ones that crossed budget years, but we were not 100% sure going into the budget year at what point we would be at the end of the fiscal year. So your roll forwards include information technology, library, public safety operations, public works, street maintenance, major streets for street maintenance, local streets for street maintenance, and then your water and sewer fund. And then again, your a roll forward or an update for the DDA fund as well. Each of those include a brief explanation as to why we need to make a change.
Okay, so we have a number of items here. City manager drew attention to most of them. One of those is the support for the Tri-Community Coalition, something that we talked about that didn't make it into the budget. That has been remedied, and it is in there, along with a number of other adjustments and then the roll forward. Are there any comments or questions on these agenda items? Good. No? Okay. Seeing none, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on R 3018?
Lennon?
Yes.
Stedman?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. Before we move on to communications, I'm going to again hijack the meeting, but this time it is for somebody much better than I who will be speaking. Our state representative is with us, Mr. Robert Wittenberg. Mr. Representative, how are things in Lansing?
Good evening. I don't know if I would make that claim. I aspire to be like you someday, Mr. Mayor, so I appreciate the kind words, though. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I apologize for my tardiness. I was coming from another event in a council meeting that ended a little earlier, so I came from that and came straight over here. And we'll be brief. Just wanted to come say hello and then also let people know about some upcoming community conversations that we're hosting throughout the 27th district. So again, Robert Wittenberg, State Representative, 27th District, and there are 7 communities that comprise the 27th District. And so we try to do, or I try to have community conversations where people can come out and I can give an update, and it's very informal, but it's a way for me to give an update as to what's going on in Lansing, and then people can ask any questions, offer any suggestions, voice any concerns that they have. And so wanted to let people know about the, we scheduled 7 in a row to get to every community between now and in December. So just wanted to let people know we have posted these throughout the community, and I actually saw one as I was walking in here today, so I appreciate you guys putting that up here. But so I'll go over this briefly, and then that's pretty much all I came for. If you guys have any questions while I'm here, I'd be happy to entertain those. But so there's one coming up this week, Thursday, September 20th at 1 o'clock at Oak Street Health, which is in Hazel Park, 1142 East 9 Mile Road. And then next week, Wednesday, September 26th at 7 p.m. at the Oak Park Community Center. Monday, October 15th at 1 p.m. at the Royal Oak Township Library at 21131 Garden Lane. Tuesday, October 16th, 6:30 p.m., Pleasant Ridge Community Center. Thursday, November 8th, 6:30 p.m., Huntington Woods Public Library. Friday, November 9th, here in beautiful Berkley at the Berkley Public Library at 11 a.m. And Friday, December 7th at 11 a.m. at the Ferndale Area District Library. And you can live anywhere in one of those communities and attend any one of those. Don't feel like you have to come to the one that's in your community. Whatever fits your schedule, come to one, come to all. You're welcome to come to all. I wouldn't recommend it necessarily because we'll probably talk about some of the same things, but you're always welcome to it. I appreciate you being there with us. And then don't even feel like you need to come to any of these to reach out to me as well. Again, you can call 517-373-0478 is the phone number, or email me at robertwittenberg@house.mi.gov. So whatever method, however you want to reach out to me is perfectly acceptable. I'm always happy to help. So that was really it, just to come say hello, let people know about the upcoming events. And I don't know if any of you have any questions for me, but
Any questions for our representative while he's here?
that was really it. And I know that you all know there's an election coming up in November, so that would be my one reminder is to vote in November. And just to let people know that straight ticket party voting is not They did away with it on this ballot. So you will not be able to vote straight party, which could cause longer time, which will cause people longer time to fill out their ballots. Hopefully here in Berkeley we should be good and we won't have to worry about lines, but it could happen. So I want to forewarn people to give yourself enough time, allot yourself enough time to get out and vote. If you are going to be out of the district or out of the city that day, you can vote absentee, and I encourage you to do that as well. But just to let people know, that we need, the turnout was wonderful in the August primary, and we want to obviously see it even better in November. So make your voice heard. So that would be my last little public service announcement.
Any additional questions or any questions for our representative?
Sure.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for coming out tonight and for
Sure.
being representing us so well in Lansing. There.
Thank you for saying that.
What can you, of course. Well, what can you tell us about the tone of business these days? There is it because we've had parts, ebbs and flows in terms of civility and partnership and things like that. How's the pulse these days? How's the mood?
Depends on the day. I can tell you that, and to be completely honest with you, it's because it is election season. We're not in Lansing as much right now. You have the Speaker of the House who is running for Attorney General, and so, unfortunately, in an era of term limits, and that's a whole nother, I can talk about that another time, but with term limits and such short term limits, people are always kind of jockeying for their next position. They're trying to figure out what's next. So you have the Speaker of the House who runs our day-to-day agenda in Lansing, on the House side, and he's running for Attorney General. And so that's his priority right now is to get elected, and that's what he's working on. So to be honest, we don't have much going on in Lansing. We've only been there a few days. We were there a few days 2 weeks ago. Obviously, we have the Jewish holidays, and then we'll be back there next week and the following week, and then I think we're off again until election time. And so, again, that's another discussion as to term limits and the length of term limits and running every 2 years. But as far as how things are going in Lansing, I would say it's definitely a different feel than probably what people are dealing with in D.C. But I think it is kind of a smaller version of that, and there's some it gets contentious at times, that's for sure. But for the most part, we do what we can. Personally, I try to work across the aisle as much as possible. I was proud to say that I had more. I am a Democrat, and I had more bills passed into law than any other Democrat that was in my class when I first came into office, and then have had more since passed. Because I know the importance of being able to work with everyone. We all go to Lansing because, we might have our differences philosophically, but we all go to Lansing, I would hope, thinking that we can make a difference, that we want to help out in the community. And so you got to respect that. But, we have differences in opinion as to what's best or how to get to that point. And so it's important for people to have those discussions. Unfortunately, I feel like that doesn't happen as often as it should. Again, I pride myself on speaking to people, and I don't agree with everyone in my own party or the other party all the time. So I pride myself on trying to speak to them on every issue and find out where they're coming from. But I think that's something, a little of the civility in politics, we've lost a bit of that, and it's unfortunate. But I'm hoping things will change. I'm hoping the election here, and I haven't seen, maybe other people have seen this, but I really haven't seen as many, there are still some negative ads that you're seeing around, but as many for campaign season right now as I have in the past. That I also, maybe I'm in an echo chamber in my own social media, but that's what I've noticed thus far. But sorry, it was a long-winded answer to your question, but it's, like I said, every day is different. Depends on the issue. Depends on who's actually there in Lansing at the time.
Well, thank you for your advocacy and level-headedness and trying to do the city's business. Thank
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Is there anything we should be on the lookout for here in Lame Duck?
I'll have to come back to you on that. There are a lot of different things that we're kind of curious about. So I'd say the one thing, and this is pretty timely because this just happened recently. So if anyone was watching, there were 2 ballot initiatives that were, hundreds of thousands of Michiganders signed to put something, 2 different things to the ballot. One was to raise the minimum wage here in Michigan, and one was what's called like earned paid sick time for hourly employees. And so both of those, had hundreds of thousands of signatures. And they came to us in Lansing, right? So anything that passes and the Board of Canvassers certifies comes to the legislature, and the legislature can decide to do nothing, and it goes to the ballot. They can vote it down, in essence, the same as doing nothing, and it goes to the ballot, or they can pass it, and it passes as is. The only difference is if we pass it in the legislature, to amend it moving forward, it only takes a simple majority, right? So you only need 56 votes in the House and 19 votes in the Senate. 20 in the Senate. I had to think about that. If we pass it through the legislature. If we do nothing, we send it to the ballot, and it passes at the ballot, then it takes 3/4 of members of the legislature to pass it, or to amend it, I should say. And so what happened recently with those 2 ballot proposals, they were actually, and there's some politics behind this, and I can get into that at another time. And without getting into the politics, those both were passed so that they could be changed with just a simple majority. Kind of a bait and switch, if you will, because you had people on both sides of the aisle, who were supportive of the issue, wanted to see it pass, but didn't want it to be gutted, in essence, is what we've been told that's going to happen in lame duck. So that's something to be aware of, and I can talk more about it. People reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about it. If they want to come to one of the community conversations, I can get into more depth. So that's one thing I think to be aware of, is what's going to happen with those ballot initiatives. I think there could be something that could happen with auto insurance, with auto no fault. I don't know what's going to happen. And this is an interesting topic because you have really strange bedfellows on this issue. You have some, it is not a partisan issue per se, because there are Republicans and Democrats on this side, and there's Republicans and Democrats on this side. You have, Brooks Patterson here siding with most of the Democrats on one side. You have the mayor of Detroit siding with a lot of the Republicans on the other side. It's a very complicated issue. And again, I'm happy to go over this another time. I can tell you my biggest concern is just making sure that people have the coverage that they need, and that we don't leave anyone in the cold and in the dark. And so, I've told this to everyone. We all have the same end goal in mind. Our rates are too high. We need to lower the rates, but how do we get there? And so that's kind of the discussion. And I was part of a package of bills to try to do exactly that, to lower the rates. So that was something I would be aware of as well. And I can't think of anything else offhand. I'll have to brainstorm, and we can talk offline. But again, anyone else can reach out to me. As I tell you, anytime I talk to city officials in any of the 7 communities, I'm looking out for all of you. I know and Mayor Pro Tem Baker, you probably know this number as well as anyone, and I can't think of it offhand, but how many billions of dollars have been cut from our local communities with revenue sharing over the last 15, 16 years, whatever it is, and I know you would probably know this as well. And that is transcended parties, because it happened under Democrats, it happened under Republicans, but our local communities, I always say this, you need the resources to be able to provide the services for the community, and no one's calling me in Lansing when they have an emergency. They're calling you, right? They're calling their local public safety, and you have to have the resources necessary. And so we've just been cutting and cutting and cutting our local communities, and I don't think that's something we can do. We can't have prosperous communities if we're cutting. You can't cut your way to prosperity. And I think one thing that you've seen is again, I think we did, I don't know if we did the town hall here in this community, but Michigan Municipal League did it and showed that Michigan, as far as funding for their local communities, is dead last in the United States as far as the funding for their local communities. Every other state, there's some that have been kind of stagnant, some have gone up. Michigan is the only one that's gone down. I think I talked too long.
They pulled the plug in.
Slip a $5 bill in our slot there.
I don't know if this thing is, I have a loud enough voice. I don't know if people at home will be able to hear me, but so we're the only state that we've seen our
money, revenue sharing to the local communities go down over that period of time, which is just, to me, is we shouldn't be balancing our books in Lansing on the backs of our local communities. I can tell you that. The money could be much better spent in our local communities than it would be in Lansing. So that's something that I'll be fighting against. I can tell you that if anything comes up and ranked up, that we'll gut and cut what you guys have here in Berkley and all the surrounding communities. So,
Thank you.
yeah. One other?
No, actually, the mayor asked the question I was going to, so thank you for the thoughtful answer.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate you spending some time with us, coming by and visiting, and for the work that you have done in Lansing and will continue to do.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move back to communications. I have no idea who is up.
Stedman?
Councilmember Stedman,
I
you're the
know.
lucky winner.
Okay, first of all, with the library, please just consult the website for all the programs. There are still many great programs left at the library for the rest of this month and into October. I was not able to make the last community engagement committee meeting, and I have been locked out of my computer for over a week now, and that's why I've got Darchelle's computer tonight. So I have not gotten any emails or any information, and so I was just wondering, Natalie and Sue are here, and a couple of other members of the committee. Would either one of you like to mention something that happened at the meeting?
I don't know if it's working
Yeah,
or
it's,
not.
yeah.
Turn it on.
It's on.
No,
It's okay, it's okay.
The battery might have died. Thank you.
Natalie Price, Chair of the Citizens Engagement Advisory Committee. Those of you at home can hear me. At our meeting, most recently, we started to tackle the Communications Master Plan. So we began to go through it. We are also looking at it side by side with the Planning Commission and their goals for reaching out to the community and making sure that the city's master plan lines up with the plan for the Planning Commission. So you did get the minutes. Maybe when you get on your computer, you'll be able to find them.
Okay, thank you.
And if you have any questions after you do, just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Blanchard.
Thank you, Your Honor. September is Preparedness Month, and every resident should be prepared for an emergency, as we've noted the last few days with what's going on down in North and South Carolina. The residents, some of them were not quite prepared. There's a website, ready.gov, which allows residents to download plans and lists and things like that for preparedness and for evacuation and for all kinds of things. So take a look at that. Oakland County is having a Prepare Fair September 29th, and I put some of these on the table over there. And they're going to talk about preparedness, the family preparedness tips, emergency vehicles on display, Oak Alert sign-ups, active assailant training, and Stop the Bleed training will be held that day. Again, that's September 29th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Oakland Schools, 2111 Pontiac Lake Road in Waterford, which is right across from the county building. Also on the table, I put out the latest National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin, which came out on the 14th. And there's nothing serious and eminent in the National Terrorism Bulletin. It's just a reiteration of a lot of the things that you should be careful of and watching for. So there's some of these over there. If we run out, just leave me your name and I'll get copies of them to you. So. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you, Your Honor. Glad to be back. As a quick follow-up, the website, if you go to Save My City, this is through the Michigan Municipal League. You can find out a lot of information. It's convenient that their most recent issue of their publication features this on the cover. Berkley alone has lost $1.5 million of funding from the state to balance other accounts to our representatives. Excellent point. But speaking of awesome stuff, our Berkeley Historical Committee has updated their brochure. We have many of them here, and they're also available at municipal offices with up-to-date information about the museum, their hours, the kinds of cool things that you can learn and share and grow as part of our museum and the many efforts and activities and events that they help support. So please check this out and say hi to these folks as they're out and about town. Together we're helping create history, and we can help learn and celebrate the past as well. Our Downtown Development Authority Board met last Wednesday. They discussed some upcoming projects and initiatives like bicycle sharing and the Coolidge safety and some other really cool things. So very excited about that. And congrats to the DDA and all their volunteers and all the participants in the recent Art and About series. The final one was last week, and we look forward to another successful run in the turn of the year. So thank you for everything with that. And finally, our Tech Advisory Committee has booted up, if you pardon the pun. Thanks again to the brave crew. We have a new member that was just appointed tonight. The committee's second meeting will be this Wednesday, 6:30 at the library. And as a new committee, we'll be focusing on mechanics, appointing the officers, and starting to outline the 6-month plan to see what can we do in preparation for the upcoming budget cycle and some quick wins as well. Again, helping the city to better leverage technology in 2 fundamental ways. First, to provide greater services, access, information, and collaboration with the residents and businesses, and also looking inward internally to help streamline and improve operations. As we've heard tonight, there's many opportunities yet ahead of us here, and technology might help with a couple of those. So that's awesome. And finally, it was Albert Einstein who once said in a letter to his nephew, I think, "Life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you must keep moving." Life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you must keep moving. And so I'm not actually going to pivot back to physics or anything, but actually about riding bicycles. Please be safe as you ride bicycles. There's been many times that I've seen folks that are out enjoying all that Berkeley has to offer, riding their bicycle on the wrong side of the street without a helmet on the sidewalk, which just is all sorts of bad. So, you know, the bicycle is a vehicle. It's meant to be on the roads. Please wear helmets. We give those away for free to the kids, Lids for Kids events, and be mindful of the environment around you. Again, I'm thrilled that people are out enjoying this great city that we have, but, you know, riding, you know, you're supposed to ride with traffic, not against traffic, and all that kind of stuff. And it's a great opportunity to be prepared and help stay safe and continue to enjoy all that the city has to offer.
Thank you.
Let's keep moving.
Councilmember Dean.
Not too much to report tonight on the Parks and Rec front, but I just wanted to remind everyone that registration for fall programs is still ongoing. Vacation camps are now being held when Berkeley schools are not in session, so that should be a help to parents. And there is open gym for parents and caregivers with kids under the age of 5. That's on Mondays from 9 to 11 a.m. Thank you.
Councilmember Hennon.
Yes, so with the Environmental Committee, they're working right now on education for some our stormwater issues, and also considering how can they help increase the number of bike racks that we have on Coolidge. And they're also looking at different plans to have guest speakers come into the community, and wanted to welcome our newest member who almost made it through the entire meeting, you know, Alex. And also want to welcome to the tree board, Molly, who did make it all the way through. From January to August this year, 60 to 70 trees have been taken down, city trees have been taken down, and the count may go up a little more as the year winds down. But with the recent tree program, there were 117 orders placed, so we have more trees coming in than going out. They're going to be planted sometime after the first hard frost. That'll probably be late November, so that is a good time to plant trees. You know, not other things so much, but for trees, that's okay. So that's actually the best time to plant them. So just be patient; they'll be coming. But the tree board's also looking for ways in the future to even increase that number even further. And then just touching very briefly again on code enforcement. I want strict code enforcement, but I want compassionate code enforcement too. You know, I understand that sometimes people find themselves in a tough situation, you know, where they are violating code and maybe they need some help getting things fixed, getting things back on track. So if you're one of those people and if you do need help, please reach out. There are people, there are organizations out there that are willing, that are eager to help, and we want to help get you back on track. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gavin.
Thank you, Your Honor. A couple points. Planning Commission met on the 28th and discussed and approved with some lighting and awning conditions as well, a site plan review for a facade change at a business on Coolidge. Additionally, they discussed an ordinance amendment regarding accessory buildings and structures. And there was also the first draft of the public participation plan that was shared with Planning Commission for feedback. And the next meeting will be on September 25th at 7:30. The ZBA met on September 10th, last Monday, and mostly took care of some cleaning up of issues with regards to rules and their procedures, and also had a brief update on the variances that will be coming to them at the October meeting, which there's not a scheduled date for yet. Coolidge Traffic Committee met this last week on Thursday, discussed the potential for a road diet on Coolidge, and also that was the majority of the discussion, and then also other couple smaller items. And then last thing I want to talk about tonight, and certainly Representative Wittenberg could probably speak to it at the state level, what might be happening on that front, but we've been hearing a lot about man-made chemicals, PFAS, that have been contaminating water supplies around the state. So too many communities, certainly from Flint to Kalamazoo to Alpena, have had to confront this reality that their drinking water has been dangerously compromised. So whether it be drinking water, groundwater, our soil, fish, food, there's an expectation that that fundamental necessity of life, is protected. So in that vein, what this is more about is just kind of an informational point in nature. So it's important for certainly our residents and neighbors to know that the authority that manages our drinking water system, Great Lakes Water Authority, which then sells the water to the Southeastern Oakland County Water Authority, which is who the city of Berkley purchases it from, has been monitoring PFAS since 2009. And they do a yearly screening of the drinking water, and in August, last month, GLEWA announced that these chemicals were not detected in the water supply, meaning that the PFAS levels were below that which is measurable under the EPA's standard analytical methodology for detecting these compounds. So again, more informational in nature, and just to let you know that there is that constant review and that constant yearly analysis, making sure that the fundamental source of what we exist on is being protected. So that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Baumgarten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to remind everybody that it's Wednesday night on the 19th. We do have the first of our last two informational meetings on the November ballot proposals coming up. Wednesday nights will be at 6:30 at the community center discussing the proposed community center. The next one will be October the 11th. That'll be closer to home here over in the Public Safety Building, discussing specifically the infrastructure millage. But plenty on hand to answer questions on both. We're going to do a brief presentation at each point and then turn it over to answer as many questions as our residents may have, and really just sort of let the topic of conversation flow. So it's certainly a resident-driven public event, so we're looking forward to that. Since school's back in session, our crossing guards are back being hard at work, and I do want to just give them a tip of the hat. They stand out in front of cars and try to make sure that each and every one of our kids are safely able to cross the street and get to class. So they're Berkley residents. They're Berkley residents, most of them. They're certainly Berkley staff members. They're part of the family. And we want to say thank you to each of them, and certainly to stay safe. And if you are in a school zone, just pay great attention to them. We've made a couple of improvements certainly at Anderson Middle School this year, light up sign paddles and a couple other things. But the best protection that we have is that people just give school zones their absolute and undivided attention when they're in them, and drive as safely as possible. And then last item, we have our absentee ballots will go out in the first week of October. Still time to sign up for those, as State Rep alluded to. It'll be a bit of a long ballot this year, not only with proposals, but the fact that they've eliminated straight ticket voting. So if you'd like to vote in the comfort of your own home and do plenty research, your AVs will be a great opportunity to do so. They will have 100% voter to ballot ratio this year, so we won't see any of the issues that Oakland County were nice enough to hand down to us during the primaries, but they're not able to put a cap on it this year. So we'll see 100% ballots, but for those interested in AVs, those are available as of the first week of October, and then all the way up almost until the day of. So that's the only items I have for you this evening.
Just a quick question. You talked about the meeting on Wednesday. Where would you suggest that a resident goes to look for information on any of our ballot items?
Not only at our website, but YourBerkley, YourVote.org, .net, .com, but mostly YourBerkley.org is a great resource. It auto directs back to the city's website. It's easy to remember because it truly is Your Berkley and Your Vote. In fact, we just have released a couple of informational videos today that all end with that very same message. So YourBerkley, YourVote.org.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney.
Just one item. For those who are looking for more information regarding some of the issues facing municipalities noted by Representative Wittenberg and Mayor Pro Tem Baker, the Michigan Municipal League homepage has a link referred to as Municipal Financial Dilemmas, which has more information regarding the challenges municipalities are facing. And that's it.
Thank you. A number of the items that I wanted to, that I was going to bring up have already been addressed. Just a couple of quick ones. I want to thank the Parks and Rec Department, DPW, Public Safety for allowing my children and many other children the ability to touch a truck this past Saturday. Despite the fact that a fire truck was there, I am going to give the award to DPW because they brought out the robot that goes in the sewers and the screen that the kids could watch themselves on as this robot was emerging from the pipe and going back in. So that was a big hit. They had a robot. Sorry, fire truck. You lost out this time. But speaking of fire trucks, you're not going to miss out on September 29th. As Councilmember Blanchard mentioned, we are in Preparedness Month. Our Public Safety Fire Open House will be coming up on September 29th. It's one of our annual events. A number of different things for the kids, but also, again, it's information on what you do in certain situations. Typically have a number of things, activities for the kids, and it's a tremendous time. So we have that coming up as well. The last thing I want to do is thank Scott Jennings, Parks and Rec manager, and the Berkley School District for the relationship that we have now, especially as it related to the summer camp that's just ended. With our ice arena no longer operational, Scott and the Parks and Rec Department had to kind of find other ways and other resources to continue to provide the outstanding camps with record-setting number of kids that we've had, and they were able to partner with the school district this year to help allow us to be able to provide that service to all of the kids over the past summer. And so I want to publicly thank both of them because it was not an easy thing to, one, not only figure out as far as the partnership, but also logistically to get the kids where they needed to go, when they needed to go. They do a tremendous job, as they have done every year. And with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Support. Motion to adjourn by Councilmember Stedman with support from Councilmember Hennett. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Stedman?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennan?
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. The September 17, 2018 meeting of the 37th Council has been adjourned.